Tonight, though, I mean, without further ado, this Karen B, FE, as you might know her on Facebook, she's been in it a long time. So please give it up. Give us a big flat social welcome for hopefully that works. We're about to find out. Here it comes. Big flat earth welcome for the one and only Queen of Flat Earth when she comes up on the video. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome for Miss Karen B. Karen, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can all hear you, no problem. Shout if you want to. Right, Karen, I've been telling people about you a little bit. And we've got a couple of things. I always start off with a couple of questions. And basically, you've been doing this for 10 years. It's been a crazy time in that 10 years. Um, but before all of the front end stuff, you've got to tell us who you are, where you're from, etc. Give us a bit of Karen B life story, please.
Okay. Well, I am Karen. I'm from North Carolina. Well, currently I live in North Carolina in the East Coast of the United States. I'm originally from California and I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. But I've been living here for about 15 years now and I like it. So I consider this my home now. This is where I was living when I woke up to Flat Earth back in 2015. And I've just been here ever since. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've been a stay-at-home mom pretty much the whole time that I've been doing this. I was a homeschooler for a while. Then I got into Flat Earth and I started making videos. My first video was called My Path to Flat Earth, which was published in January of 2017. Shortly after that, I started working with other people in Flat Earth, trying to, figure stuff out and get the word out. So I actually was part of the original group that started FE Core with Dr. Zach and Steve Torrance and Bob Nodell. And Rob Skiba was involved in it a little bit, but not totally.
Karen, we have our audience here is everywhere from complete newbie to 10-year veteran. So what was FE Core? Explain that.
Okay, well, FE Core was basically just a group of independent engineers, scientists, and just people with a passion for truth. Because I'm not an engineer, I am not a scientist, but I was able and willing to help the group get started. I helped them set up the 501c3, so that it became like they were trying to be an official nonprofit, scientific research organization. So that's what we were doing. And that's the group that went and did the laser test in Lake Balaton and Lake Esil, and where we were basically doing direct measurements of Earth's surface. So we did that in Balaton, like I said, in Hungary. That's where I was. Then there was another laser test done in the Netherlands shortly after that. And then we also did a test in Denver where we did it on land using survey equipment, which was like a force the line, like a play on force the line that I don't know if anybody remembers Brian Mullen, where he wanted to set up that structure to show Earth curvature. But that's like it's a cost prohibitive thing to do when you start getting into the cost of the materials and physically laying it out for miles and miles in one direction. And then you get into people's property and stuff like that. It's really something that's kind of hard to actually actualize. So what we did is we did the survey equipment with Chris Van Maitre and basically measured, against the sea level, how much the Earth went up and down over the course of a couple miles. And just like everything else, there was no curvature measured in either direction. concave or convex. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Karen,
that's what we did.
before you went up to Flat Earth, what were you doing? Were you a conspiracy buff, or were you just... How did it work? Who woke you up as well? What was the thing?
Well, okay, before Flat Earth, I was a little bit into conspiracy stuff. Actually, sometimes this triggers people, but I was really into Bigfoot because I grew up in California, right? In Northern California, which is where the Patterson Gimli video of Bigfoot was filmed, the famous one from 1969 in Bluff Creek. It's where Bigfoot got its name. And so that was just a thing in California, and I was really into that. When I was younger, I was always fascinated with it, and I watched anything and everything about Bigfoot and Sasquatch for a long time. And then, but I never had one thing that's trippy though is I never had any sort of encounters or experiences or anything like that in California. Then I moved out here and I live in the country now, and almost immediately, really strange stuff started happening that was very Bigfoot like behavior. And I started having all kinds of interactions and sightings and all sorts weird things. So kind of before Flat Earth, I was into Bigfoot, and then it kind of was reawakened when I moved out here. But see, that was it. See, I moved here in 2011. So for a few years, I was getting back into the Bigfoot thing. It's a huge thing out here. There's Bigfoot festivals in Western North Carolina all the time. Um, and it's actually a very active place for sightings and encounters, just as much as the Pacific Northwest, here in the Appalachian Mountains. And I started to realize that they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Um, so that's kind of what I was doing and what I was into before Flat Earth. So I kind of like to say that Bigfoot got me into Flat Earth. Although once I started getting into Flat Earth and woke up to that, I thought, wow, maybe I can talk to these people about Bigfoot, right? Because a lot of people will still think it's that they're not real, or they think you're crazy, or oh, horrible. They were like, "You're making Flat Earth look stupid," and I was like, "Really?"
How stupid can it be?
Yeah, so that really wasn't very well received. Although now there's other people that I've come across. There's other people that have watched stuff on my channel, and they're like, "Yeah, I was into Bigfoot too." And so now more people are starting to come out and be like and talk about their experiences and their encounters. So it's not as bad as it was 10 years ago. But really that first year, 2015, 2016, the people were not having it. They did not want to hear anything about it.
And who woke you up, Karen? Who got you onto Flat Earth?
Um, well, I just started friending different people on Facebook, because I was getting into these other groups and started looking at other stuff, branching off from Bigfoot. Because once people are open to talking about Bigfoot, it's just like Flat Earth. They'll talk about anything. It's like, all kinds of different stuff comes up. So I just started adding people to my friends list that were into different things. And this one guy that I had friended started posting Flat Earth videos. And I was like, "Oh, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Like, is this guy for real? I'm gonna have to unfriend this guy. Like, that's ridiculous." Um, and so, he kept posting stuff. And one day I was like, "You know what? I've had it. I have had it. I'm gonna delete this guy off my Facebook." But I was like, "But first, I'm gonna watch this video. It's gonna be funny. I'm gonna laugh, and then I'm gonna tell him how stupid he is, and then I'm gonna get rid of him off my Facebook." Um, and then I watched the video, which I think was a flat water, flat earth video. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. The channel's been around forever. Um, so it was one of his videos. And then after I watched it, I was like, it's not really as funny as I thought it was gonna be. And now I have more questions, and I'm gonna, and I was like, immediately, I'm gonna debunk this, right? As most people do. And then a couple of weeks later, I was like, man, I think think the earth might be flat and this is really screwed up. Like, and I was like, I had very young children. My children at the time were like under 5 years old. I had like a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I was like, oh my God, what do I tell my kids? Like, what do I tell them? Like, am I, because uh, my son's already thinking he lives on a globe and then I'm like, am I supposed to just keep telling them that? Like, do I tell them what I just found? Like, what do I do? Like, this is so perplexing. Anyway, I ended up just teaching them both sides of the thing so they know globe earth and they know flat earth. I told them not to talk about it in school because I didn't want them setting themselves up to be in a position where they couldn't defend themselves or people would start making fun of them because people that's how it goes, especially when you're talking about children and other children. There's like no filter. They're like, you're stupid, so I just made sure that I said, just don't talk about it. This is just what I'm looking at and I have questions. And then but they were still in public school at that time. Well, then COVID hit in 2020, and they were still pretty young. They were still in like elementary age school, and they shut down the schools and handed out these laptops, and they were expecting like 5th graders and 3rd graders to sit in their room and like focus on a screen and learn that way, and it was just a complete disaster. I don't know if anybody else went through that, but it was just a complete disaster. I was like, my children were like in tears, they were frustrated, they didn't know how to complete their work online, like it was just too much for them. And so I was like, you know what? Screw this. And I pulled them out of school and I started homeschooling them. And so I homeschooled them for pretty much all through COVID. They just went back to public school just this last year. Um, and actually, it actually turned out to be one of the best things I ever did. I was really worried in the beginning that I was screwing up my kids because I'm not a teacher. I don't know. I don't think I'm stupid, but I'm also not an educator by trade, right? So I was just like, well, let's just see how it goes. It couldn't be worse than what they were going through that first year,
Exactly.
right? It was There's no way it was going to be worse. But so I found these books that I could order online. So I ordered them, and then I had my children use pencils and write in the books. I didn't do any online anything. I completely dumped Common Core math because my daughter was like and crying. She was like, they tell me to draw all these circles. And like, I don't know if you guys have seen what they make elementary school children do for Common Core math, but it is insane. They make them draw like hundreds of circles to figure out, like they should never, it just makes it harder than it actually needs to be, which is crazy. So I said, you'll never have to draw another circle ever again, and then it just ended up working out really well. They did really well. Then in my state, every year you have to give them a test, like an aptitude test once a year to make sure that they're progressing. And they were getting the highest scores, really high scores on these tests. Not the highest, but it was like above average. That's how they tell you. It's like below average, at average, above average, or well above average. And they were always getting above average scores. Um, so it actually was one of the best things I ever did. Then they went back to state school, public school, just this last year, like I said, and they're getting really good grades. My daughter's in advanced classes. So it actually ended up being one of the best things I ever did.
How does the flat earth affect your children now? How old are they, if you don't mind me asking, Karen?
They're teenagers, 13 and 15.
And how does flat earth and the things you researched sit with them now? Have they all got Sasquatch costumes?
No, but well, I think, they kind of go against mom. They're like, they troll me about flat earth. They say, oh no, I think Earth's a globe or whatever, even though I've told them all this stuff. And we've had all these discussions. But I think that, there's certain things that they say and do that I'm like, okay, they've been listening. They question stuff, they come home and they're
Excellent.
like, they're correcting their teachers on things, which I love that. um,
Mm,
so I don't know that they're not walking around going, I'm a flat earther or anything like that, but I think it's definitely taught them to think critically about what
excellent.
is told to them by the mainstream, and they don't believe everything that they hear or see anymore. They really do think about stuff. They independently research stuff, which
Excellent.
I love. My son loves to look at all kinds of stuff about history. Like, he knows all kinds of stuff about all these dictators and everything that happened. And he tells me stuff now, which is
Mm,
interesting. I mean, for what it's worth. I mean, we all know history is up for debate, but um, I just think it's interesting that I just love to see that they have like a natural ability to go seek out information and research stuff on their own. If they have a question about something, I'm like, I don't know, why don't you figure it out and tell me what you find,
excellent.
and it's made them able to kind of put stuff through that filter, I think.
Excellent. Excellent. No, that's really good, Karen. I think that's how it should be. If you can get that, that's how it should be. Karen, bringing you back to Flat Earth, you were inspirational in Flat Earth, particularly with something called Flattoberfest. Now,
Oh yeah.
back in the day, I mean, 10 years ago when we all came into this, we were trying to organise festivals, do this, but it was insane. It was a million times more frantic than the things we do now because no one really knew what the hell was going on. But you came through that and you started organising something called Flattoberfest. Tell us a little bit about what you did with that.
Okay, well, Flattoberfest, yeah. Okay, so the very first Flattoberfest was actually in 2019 because I had a friend, a local flat earther guy here was running a venue, which actually was like a musical venue, and it was called the Firmament. And
Oh,
so
wow.
he was like, I want to do a flat Earth meetup. He's like, I run this place, and then we realized what it was. Like, it had the audio video set up, it had a bar, everything. So we're like, cool, let's do an event. And he really wanted to have Rob Skiba. So we
Mm.
got Rob Skiba, we got Bob
God bless
Nodell,
them.
Mark,
God bless them
and Mark.
both.
Yeah,
God bless them
exactly.
both. I mean, crikey, yeah.
Mhm. And, Mark Sargent, and, we had it was only 1 day, and probably a little over 200 people showed up to that,
Wow.
but it was a really cool event. It was the one time that Rob Skiba did his entire presentation
Mm.
uninterrupted, so he did, like, a 3.5 hour beginning to end, the whole flat earth spiel, like, everything. At
Yeah, I
that
remember
event.
that. I remember.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty cool. He was great. He just when it was time for him to go on, I was just like, "Do you want an introduction or anything?" Like, he was just like, "Whatever you wanna do," and I was like, "Rob Skiba," and he just got down to business and just laid it all out there, like, for 3 I was really impressed, it was pretty cool. Um, I wish I had a really high quality recording of that talk, but I don't.
I miss Rob. I think the community misses Rob a lot. I think he was a beacon for the biblical side of it. I think he was absolutely amazing, and Bob as well. Poor Bob. God bless them
Yeah,
both.
Bob and Rob were both very, very influential to me when I first got into flat Earth because Rob Skiba, because back at that time, 2015, he was not fully committed at that time. He was still kind of,
Mm,
testing the globe, like his website says.
mm,
And Bob, because he was just such a well-spoken intellectual
very clever.
man and a professional. So it was like, okay, this guy's talking about it and he doesn't sound like a loony bin, because sometimes you'll hear people talk about flat earth and they just sound crazy. Like, not that they are, but it
Sorry
just
about
if you I mean, I'm sure I
that.
do it too. But it's just like when you have that technical knowledge, and he's an engineer, and he knows about all these different, things as far as physics go. It sounds completely different when somebody like that talks about it,
Mm,
you know, versus like
mhm.
somebody who doesn't have that sort of training. So it just made me really think, okay, there is something to this, and I'm not crazy for thinking that there is something to this. And it really inspired me to start speaking out and start putting out content too,
I mean,
because of
you were
that.
the only, there wasn't any, back then there was you and Patricia Steer, and that was literally it for female content of Flat Earth. And it was a
Yeah.
strange time. And then I say to a lot of people here and the people that I meet, it was always male dominated, the subject. It always seemed to be a masculine awakening. And then you probably can't make out too much in here from where you are, but we have, since COVID, we have so many women have woken up to Flat Earth. It's literally a miracle. It's lovely. It's a lovely thing to see. And when we do our dues here, if you'd gone back before COVID and we were doing it, it would just be guys with the occasional couple of ladies. But we have groups of ladies that make their way here. So
Hmm.
yeah, something along the line has woken up the divine feminine as well.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely, over the years, a lot more women have come forward too, which is awesome.
Karen, you do something now called Coffee Talk. I mean, before that, I mean, you were on Globebusters. You were Mark Sargent's #1 Queen of Flat Earth. For how many years did you do that? Because you took over after
Oh yeah.
Patricia, right?
Yeah, I actually don't know if Patricia was ever an official co-host of Strange World. They did Flat Earth and Other Hop, or they did the Secret
Oh, yeah.
Show.
Yeah, they
They did
did.
the
Yeah, they
Secret Show
did.
together, and I think she was a guest on Strange World at one point, but I don't know if she was ever there regularly.
Yeah, I think it was
Um,
the other one you were talking about. Yeah.
yeah, the Secret
Not
Show
Karen.
that they used to do.
Mhm.
So yeah, then Mark Sargent asked me to co-host Strange World with him, and actually at first I didn't want to do it. I was like, I don't know about that, and it took me a couple months to agree to do it. I thought about it for a while first before I started doing it, and then I co-hosted it with him for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. It was
Yeah,
a
yeah,
while,
that was good.
and then the Flattoberfest thing. I think had a lot to do with that, because that one that we did in 2019, at that point it was not really meant to be a regular thing. We just did it because this guy up the road who had a venue was like, "Hey, I got a venue. Let's have a meetup." And I was like, "Okay." And so we did. And then that guy later on, he stopped running that place. I don't know what happened, but that was gone. And then COVID hit, right? Like right after that, the next year, then
Mm.
it became COVID, and Robbie had already stopped doing the FEICs. There, and everything being shut down, there was nothing planned really
Mm.
for 2020, and I didn't even think anything was going to happen in 2020 until my friend Nathan contacted me, and he's like, "Hey, we can go try to use this venue over here." And the whole kicker about that, this was the funniest thing, was that that venue, the only venue, because like, flat earthers are not going to go to a meetup where they have to wear a mask or they have to
Yeah,
social
yeah.
distance. Like, we were not doing any of that shit, right? So it was the only venue that I could find that would not enforce mandates or didn't have any of these restrictions, and it happened to be a shrine club, which of course is like a Freemason organization. um,
Was that
and
where it was? The Shriners Club.
Right, it's the Shriners Club, and it's got the Mason symbol on it and everything, and the address was 119, which is,
666.
well, the address is 119, which is 911 inverted, so, like, there
Oh
was
my
all
god.
of this stuff about it, but it was the only it was just an event center. It's like, it's a shrine club, like, anybody can rent it. You can rent it and have a wedding, you can rent it and have a birthday party, you can rent it and, play music. Anybody can. So,
Sacrifice children.
right. And it's and so and it's like one of the bigger clubs on the East Coast. and it's privately owned, which is why they don't have to follow any mandates. They didn't put up with it. They were like, "Oh, we don't do that here." And so I was like, "All right, well, we'll see if people." And I started asking my friends. I called up Rick Hummer. I'm like, "Yeah, I found this place to do an event this year." And he's like, "Really? Where is it? They're not going to make you wear the masks or do any of this stuff." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, what is it?" I was like, "It's a shrine club." And he started laughing. I'm so glad you're laughing. You know, I'm so glad that's your reaction because it's like it's literally the only choice we have if we want to keep doing stuff. And so we went for it and we did. We had a Flattoberfest at the Shrine Club in 2020, and we had like over 400 people there with no masks, no social distancing, no proof of a vaccine, nothing. And we had a blast when nobody else was doing anything. So that I would say was probably one of the things I've been the most proud of is that we were able to have a big, large live event with no mandates. I know it was a shrine club, but still.
Karen, one of the things that I think you're famous for, and only a few of us will think that, is that you are the only woman when you had all those pretend fall shootings or school fall shootings, whatever, with AR-15s, about a month after they happened, you released a video of you in the garden with an AR-15 shooting anything you could see. And I thought, if I wasn't married, you'd be the one.
Actually, that was it. That was a 6 hour.
I have no idea. We don't have guns here. We don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
excellent
anyway,
time.
yeah.
And Karen, listen, Flat Earth is fraught with drama. I mean, it's full of it. It always has been. Can I get your take if you want to talk about it? Because there's so much happened since the going to Antarctica or not with the German thing. You've had Patricia Spear in the Axiom 3. You've had the German flip-flop. What is your view of the all of those things, and how do you think it's left the community?
Well,
yeah, take a breath. Take a breath.
yeah. Okay, well, I found it all very, like, strange, really. I found it strange that, that right before Antarctica, Jaren starts throwing this thing out there, this ultimatum out there, like, if there's a sun circling in Antarctica, then the Earth has to be a globe. And I was like, why are you saying that? Why? I didn't understand. Like he never said that before, or maybe he did, and I just blew it off. But I really don't remember him saying that before. About 6 months or so. Right? And I was like, why would you say that? Because the way I started out, one of my very first friends in Flat Earth was Zach, Decimal Z or Dr. Zach or whatever. He doesn't really do a lot of content very much anymore, but he used to make a lot of videos and he would talk about, triangulating the sun and how you can't triangulate the sun. And it was all about sun angles. And he wanted to draw a new map or try to redo the map. And so he was like, if you're interested in helping me, then email me, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hell yeah, I want to know what's going on in this place. So I emailed him and then we started corresponding and we all became friends and we would, scrutinize everything together. He taught me how to use AutoCAD, and I even used AutoCAD to make a 2-scale model of the Earth and the Moon and the Sun, and like work out how all the angles work, and like I really got a very, very thorough understanding of the Cartesian coordinate system and how intimately related to the sky it is, and in the land's relationship to certain celestial bodies and all that stuff, right? But I also, in learning all that and knowing that sort of basically the paradox of like the Earth and the sky, the Earth always measuring flat, but then the sky looking as if it's going around you, like the heavens look spherical, but Earth is, anyway. So I had already gone through that, and I had already known that not really known, but at that time I was under the impression that you can't really prove that the earth is flat by looking at the sky. You prove the earth is flat by looking at the earth and taking direct measurements of the earth, which makes sense. I mean, it's logical.
Mhm.
And so, for me, I was already like, I don't care what they see in Antarctica. Even when it started coming up, they're like, "Hey, would you ever go there?" You know, blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Well, I already went and suffered the cold in Lake Balaton, and that sucked. And I don't really want to do that again. Somebody else can go, okay?" And so they got Jaren and Austin and that girl Lisbeth to go to Antarctica. But I already knew, especially by spending lots of time with Cami, because Cami, who is Bob's wife, um, actually was a gemologist as a career, and so she's very, very familiar with crystals and gems and refraction and just polarity and
Mm.
different the way that light works with different properties and stuff like that. And so I had already, just been learning a lot from her as far as that goes. Of course, learning from Zach with like, the sun angles and all that stuff. So I already knew that there was something weird going on in the sky, and that most people like there's a possibility that we'll never ever be able to explain it or understand the mechanics of what goes on in the sky. So for me, I was already like, the sky's a mystery, but whatever they see, if they see a circumpolar light in Antarctica, it just means that light is following the physics of electromagnetics as we know it. It doesn't mean that the Earth is a globe. At least that's how I took it. So even when that TFE thing, the very first hint of it, and Jaren saying, "Oh, but I'm saying all this stuff," I was like, "Why are you saying that? Like, I just don't get it." I knew there was nothing that they were going to see, even if they saw the sun going around their heads 24 hours. That was had did not mean Earth is a globe. So for me, nothing changed from before TFE to after. Nothing. Literally nothing, except for we have people who laid their eyes on a 24-hour sun in Antarctica, which was already done. It's already been documented, like in Lady Blount and like other
Yeah.
previous, 100-year-old texts from geocentrists of the past. Like this is already a known observation. So, but even they were like, "But Earth's flat, right?" So I kind of am with that. Like, I think they were right. We didn't figure out anything new, and they're not going to figure out anything new by going to
Exactly.
Antarctica. So when Jaren started, making that claim beforehand, I was like, I just didn't understand it. And then when he came back and did that flip flop, when Austin was like, Austin's still the same, and I know Lisbeth is kind of like retreated back into the shadows, and understandably so. But even her, I've talked to her since then, and her opinion hasn't changed. So it is very strange. I just find the whole thing very strange. Like, why would you start making that claim beforehand? And Jaren has not been absent for any of these conversations that we had beforehand. Jaren, I mean, if you go back and look at the Globebusters archive, this has been discussed many, many times over the
Mhm.
years.
Yeah.
Bob knew exactly what the contradiction between the earth and the sky was. This is not a new problem. We already knew about this. So I don't understand why it was like all of a sudden he missed all these conversations about these different things that we've discussed that are things known in physics, how light works, the tricks of light that can happen with different things. It's just like, polarizing light. You can literally, using magnetic fields, phase one light in and out and make it
Mhm.
invisible in one way and visible another way. So it's like, maybe we won't ever figure out the sky exactly what it is, but there's things that we have discussed multiple times over the years that are possibilities, which leave room for speculation, which should allow for someone who's looked at something for like this for 10 years, them to understand that what you're seeing up there does not dictate the physical makeup of this place that we're existing in. It's part of it, but it doesn't mean we live on a globe. There's too
Absolutely.
many other things. There's way too many other things like the second law of, thermodynamics and, just way too many other things. We see too far. I mean, this place is not what they're saying it is.
No.
Maybe we don't, it might not be Yahweh's terrarium, but it's not what they're saying it is, you know?
Yeah,
And I
definitely
just
not.
find it strange that after so many years and so many discussions that you could go back to that way of thinking. I just don't ever see myself going back to that way of thinking because I mean, we've had ample opportunity, ample time. We have the technology. We have long, the optics to prove that the Earth is a ball from Earth's surface. If that's what it was.
Yeah,
But
and
again and
so
again and again, it presents itself as flat and stationary. So I don't know. I just don't understand it. It's-
no, I mean, it's good for the drama though, right? The whole flat Earth, because it's a divine truth, because it's something that you have to feel it. When you get it, your mouth drops and you feel humbled, right? Everybody has that sort of experience. It's like, crikey. And there's nothing else that can do that. So once you're at that stage, you've dispelled the ball. So I don't think it's possible for any flat earther to go back to a ball. That's why everyone's got their own opinion with Jared or whatever. They thinks it's cone. I spoke to
So
Dave Weiss about the other day, and he said, it can be cloned. It can be anybody. And I'm like, yeah, you're not wrong. But talking of Austin, I was doing some podcast the other week, right, I was moderating the chat. And it was the most bizarre thing. It was up on Dave's channel. It was a whole room full of Jews. Full of
it was the what
literal
now? I'm
full
having a hard
room.
time.
Sorry, Karen, it was a full room of Jews. Orthodox Jews. They were all in this room, and they were all describing. Some of them were describing. They wanted Yahweh's Torah, and they wanted
Mm.
they were trying to explain it in the Jewish culture and all of that stuff. In all of their books, it's a flat Earth. And then you have all the other anti-flat Earther Jewish people. It was the most bizarre thing. But anyway, get back to Austin. He still can't believe Jerry. They clearly don't think, but they've got a debate coming up. Do you know about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we all have to watch that. But I mean, how's that going to go? Hi, yeah, I'm Jerry, it's a globe. Austin, no, it's not. Where are you going to go? It's just, they can't be respectful because someone's lying. And someone's done something wrong to lie. I don't think no flat earther would do that. There's some kind of incentive there. Anyway, I go on about it. Karen, what I want to do is because you've done everything from your coffee talk to Mark Sargent to podcasts to events to festivals and guns, right? So you've got the whole package. But now, and Bigfoot. So you come all that way. But now one of the things you do, which I don't know much about at all, is these are crystals. Now, my take on crystals is they've probably got some vibrational frequency, some electricity in them, or whatever, but I don't know. So, if you are up for it and you have anything to tell us all about crystals as a 101, we'd love to hear.
Okay. Well, crystals is kind of it's a big subject actually. I got into crystals um, from Cami because I started talking with her, and we were discussing all things like how could the sky be working, how could this be happening, and she started, teaching me about all this stuff. And so then I just started researching it on my own, and I realized that the crystals are essentially it's like the mineral kingdom, right? Like there's plants, there's animals, and then there's the minerals. It's like the trinity, right,
Mm.
of this realm, right? But minerals, in my opinion, which are crystals, are the original. It's like the original life form. They could be even considered immortal because they have such a long extended life. Um, and I realized how important it was really to how this place works because I mean I'm sure you're all very familiar with like everything technology has crystal material in it, has
Mm.
pure quartz crystal integrated into it somehow. Silver connections, gold connections, platinum, all of these things are crystals. Even metal is a crystal. It's just a different type of crystal than maybe what you might be used to, hearing about or seeing. But these are all crystalline materials that have very specific properties, and it's basically how everything works. It's almost like powered like off of crystals in some way, shape, or form. If you think about it, like quartz crystal naturally has piezoelectric properties, so if you apply mechanical or electrical pressure to it, it actually, it emits energy. And crystals each have their own, like you were saying, they each have their own frequency or dominant oscillatory rate. And because they have this very organized structure, well, let me see if I can share, let me share my screen.
Karen, do crystals hold electricity? Or do they just create it? Do they store it? Is it like a battery or not?
Yeah, actually, there are crystal batteries. Let me see if I can put my screen share here. Okay, here we go. There are crystal batteries, and they're fascinating because they started making crystalline batteries because you know how, if a regular battery, you plug it in, you charge it, you use the
Mhm.
charge, and et cetera, and you have so many cycles, and after a certain amount of time, the battery degrades and it
Yeah.
just doesn't hold as much of a charge over time. Well, crystal batteries actually far outlast um, traditional batteries as far as like what we're known about, what we're used to. They can like be used like thousands and thousands more cycles than a regular battery, and it's really fascinating because when the crystal battery has a charge, the slurry, it's like they have this chargeable slurry inside. So when the battery is charged, it's solid. It's like inside will be solid, and as it uses its charge, it becomes liquid again. It goes back into a liquid, and then you charge it again and it becomes solid. And it's like that's how it's working. It's really fascinating, actually. Um, so I have a talk that I started or have made. It's called the Crystalline Realm. I'll get through as much of it as I can. Um, so
Just before Karen, just before you go, the firmament. Are you saying is that a crystal? Are you thinking that's a crystal? They say in various places it's a crystalline structure. Wouldn't
yeah,
that make more sense in terms of electricity as well? And I don't know. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It must be crystalline. The pillars of Earth could be giant quartz crystals. You know what I mean? Like when people show pillars, they'll show like carved pillars that look like they're off of Romanesque type
Mm.
buildings and stuff. I don't think it looks anything like that. I think if anything, they would be giant crystalline structures. And also quartz crystal being the crystal that is the most used in technology and having piezoelectric properties, it could definitely be like the source of whatever is powering this realm.
Mm.
Could be an arrangement of different crystals with their different properties interacting in different ways that basically make up this perpetual energy
Mm.
machine that keeps us alive, you know? And I
Yeah, I've
say
been thinking
machine,
about that.
but it's not, not a machine in like the mechanical way that we know of. It's like a big organic, you know,
Mm.
that's how I picture it anyway. So crystals, solid material whose atoms or unit cells are arranged in a highly ordered lattice structure. And so there's different crystals, have different bonds and different are made up of different types of substances. So then they have different properties. Um, Technically, anything that is solid could be considered crystalline, if you ask a physicist. So there's two types. There's two types of crystalline materials: amorphous and crystalline. So the crystalline one has the organized atoms and the very super strong bonds on the side with the predictable properties, and then that's when you'll get like things that are like double refractive and iridescence and different stuff like that from crystals that are built up in certain ways with specific bonds. An amorphous solid doesn't have those strong regular bonds with like the golden angles, with those angles, and that's what a glass is. That's what glass is. So glass is considered an amorphous crystalline, or plastic would be considered an amorphous crystalline, because it's a solid substance, but it doesn't have that lattice structure, that very specific lattice structure. So there's different types of crystal growths. A cube is actually you'll notice like the platonic solids. I'm sure everybody here is like familiar with the platonic solids. Well,
Mhm.
those are from crystalline habits. So a cube is a platonic solid. This octahedron is considered a platonic solid, which is like, it's like two four-sided pyramids that are stuck together. Um, Dodecahedron, so all of these shapes are natural crystal shapes that grow on their own. Like, this is just, it's like the creator made programmed material, and when the material is in the right conditions, it naturally forms into these shapes without any help from man or anybody. And they start from a super saturated slurry, so you'll have, it's almost like, now water, this is a very condensed version of this. I'm sorry if I'm going too fast and I'm putting too
No,
much
no, it's
information out there.
good. Keep going. I love it.
But water is one of the only two substances that are considered liquid crystal. Water is a liquid crystal, and mercury is a liquid crystal. And both of these things are considered carriers or solvents, right? So basically, what you'll have when crystals grow, you'll have like a solution, a super saturated slurry solution. And then when that solution, it gets heated up somehow under the earth, which is where, like, these different processes that happen. Maybe there's some sort of piezoelectric, process happening that is providing heat to these slurries that happen underground, and then the crystals grow. Um, and it happens actually very fast. Things can crystallize in months. They'll tell you, like, if you watch these channels where these people go hunting for, digging for crystals out of the ground, like there's really famous channel called the Crystal Collector, which he'll find these big crystals and he pulls it out and he's like, "What?" And he's like, "This is 4.5 billion years old." And it's like, no, it isn't, bro. It doesn't have to be 4.
It's a month old, Brian. There you go.
Yeah. So, like, the interesting thing with a lot of these geologies and stuff, and I've even talked to geologists, like they show up in my stream and I'll ask them, I'm like, "What do you think? Is this, from a flat earth geologist point of perspective, is this like a reasonable explanation?" And the guy was like, "Yeah, for the most part." The thing is the timeline is super extracted out. Like, they want to enforce that like evolutionary deep time, and they make you think that these crystals formed like millions of years ago, and it was just magically sitting in the ground for 4 million years until you came and picked it up out of the ground. But then if you go to these crystal digging sites, which is one thing that I learned living out here in this area, there's so many mineral mines and open places that are open for digging. And what they'll do every once in a while is they have like a big open pit where people can go and dig for crystals. Sometimes you can find them right on the surface. But what they'll do every once in a while is they'll just bring in a big bulldozer and they'll mix up the soil. And, oh, look, there's more crystals. Like, well, you didn't wait 4 million years before you turned the soil. It was just like they do it once a year. So you start to realize that, like, these processes actually happen really, really fast, and you don't need these deep time to grow these crystals. You just need the correct conditions. And they know this because, actually, let me see. I'm just going to skip ahead to this, if I can find. Well, this is crystallization in slow motion. So sometimes you can watch crystal growing. See how it's just happening right in front of you? Well, you don't need this extreme deep time for these crystals to grow. All you need is the right conditions, which was one of the biggest things for me. Okay, so, and now, I don't consider myself like a hardcore religious person or anything, but when I started doing, one of the things that I did as a project is I read through the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible. And we did it like just for what it says. It was a version, not the King James version. We looked up the root words of all these different words. And Genesis, reading Genesis blew my mind, because like the first words is, in the beginning there was a formless deep, a formless deep. And then the spirit of Elohim moved across the formless deep. The formless deep, the waters. What is that? It's a super saturated crystal slurry. That's what it is. And then so what happens? It gets imbued with whatever, the divine spark of whoever made this place, whatever you want to call it, and things start growing. Land starts forming. Mountain ranges, which could be, if you look at mountains, they all have like 3 or 4 faces. They even refer to these faces of the mountains, like the north face, the south face, the east face, or right, whatever. And you'll see that they're basically giant versions of those crystal habits, those shapes, like the tetrahedra or the octahedra. They're just giant versions of those shapes, but they're not like perfect. They're not, gem quality, but you can see the geometry. It's the same geometry because it is the sacred geometry of the realm, right? So that to me was like really what got me going on crystals. I was like, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. And if you look for the geometry, like the angles, you'll see, and I started even finding, okay, yeah. So this is talking about how they grow quartz. Now, they don't even, all the quartz that's in technology now, like we just discussed, like they used to go mine quartz, and they used to have to find the best, clearest quartz pieces that they could, and then they would have to slice them up and like get rid of all the imperfections. But what they do now is they don't do that. Right now, what they do is they get bulk, like mass quantities of the purest quartz they can find, which actually comes from a mine here in North Carolina, which is called in Spruce Pine. And so they get pure quartz crystal, and they crush it and they dissolve it. They use a different chemical to dissolve the quartz back into some water, into these giant autoclaves. And then they start the process. They put seed crystals in the giant autoclave, and it takes them like 6 to 9 months, and they literally grow every crystal. See, here we go. This is them. This is the big autoclave. And they literally grow every crystal now that goes into your electronics is grown, because they have better control over the quality, right? So you get the purest quality quartz crystal that they grow in under a year. These giant quartz crystals, that's pure quartz crystal, grown in an autoclave in 6 to 9 months. They do it all the time. So that tells you right there that there is no deep time. There's not millions of years needed for these things to grow. And and quartz is one of the most abundant minerals on Earth. It's literally one of the things you find the most of, and it's everywhere. And it doesn't. And I mean, that, what does that tell you right there? You don't need to. There is no deep time. All of this stuff happens very fast. So it's just mind blowing, because like this isn't really, a lot of people don't really know this, but look at those. Each of one of those quartz crystals, they'll get like 10,000 chips out of one of those crystals, or something ridiculous, because they just use tiny little chips. And they don't just do this with quartz. They can grow topaz. They can grow anything that they want to grow. They just have to get the right mineral mixture, start with the right slurry, and then put a seed crystal and give it the right conditions, and they can grow it. So like industrial, diamonds, stuff like that. Like, they grow diamonds in a lab, and they do it just like this. It's the same process. They don't take coal and put it under pressure. That's a total misnomer. Coal is carbon and diamonds are carbon, but they grew under different conditions, which is why, some of it is coal, some of it is graphene, and some of it comes out as diamonds. The ones that came out as diamonds just happen to be in that right that right condition. It had the perfect conditions to form in that way.
Wow.
And they figured it out.
So when you say diamonds, they grow diamonds, are you talking just for industrial use, and they polish them, cut them, and put them in a stone? Put them in a ring. And they do
Oh
that
yeah,
with
well, a
it?
lot of you can get lab grown diamonds. Yeah, they'll
Yeah?
all
Okay.
of it. Like cubic zirconia, which is like a diamond substitute that was a big thing before lab
Mm.
grown diamonds. But even because cubic zirconia, you don't really find pure cubic zirconia crystals out in nature anymore. They would basically like collect ore and then extract the cubic zirconia and then grow the crystal from that and then facet it to make it look like a diamond.
Okay. And this goes on forever. In the natural world, does quartz just grow forever? It must be, right? It just will keep going.
Yeah. So let me see if I have it here. There an example. Oh, crystals always also grow in a spiral, just so you know, which is interesting because it just shows you like the sacred geometry following this sacred geometry angles, and then it grows in a spiral. The golden ratio, like it
Ah.
is the signature of the creator, right? Um, There's a crystal growth video. I want to see if I can find that one. Maybe you guys are familiar with
Do the crystals in scripture?
wait.
I'd like to see that.
Oh yeah, because well, let me see. Okay, here, this is what I was looking for. The crystal mind. If you guys saw this, you guys remember the Superman movie in the
Mhm.
Fortress of Solitude, the big giant crystals?
Yeah.
Like that place is real. And it's called the Nika Crystal Mine. Although this place has been reflooded, they literally had to develop a system of pumps to pump all the water out so that they could go into the cave and go and see the crystals.
That's
Um,
massive.
so they're so they're giant selenite crystals, and they had to wear special suits because it was so hot in this room. Like you can't even stay in there for longer than a half an hour, even with the suit. It's like a completely hostile environment, but it's an example of the perfect environment for crystals, right? And it's always got the slurry in it. Now they let the water go back in, so it's this superheated, naturally heated, saturated crystal slurry, and look at the giant crystals that grew in there. It's just a modern example of this process happening in, you know, in a large scale. That's the other thing too. It's a fractal, right? You can find super tiny little crystals that look the same as these that are giant. They weigh like many multiple tons. They're huge. But it all grows the same way.
Do you think that sort of crystalline structure is everywhere below us? That big? Do you think that's
Yeah.
possible?
Oh yeah, I think well, I also watch this channel. It's called the Action Adventure Twins or something like that, but these guys where they go and they find these tiny little holes and they go in there and they go like miles into the earth following these caves and they find these huge rooms that open up and they find all these massive crystals that are UV reactive. They'll put the light up to it and then take it away and the crystal will be glowing. It's like these massive crystal rooms that are just under the earth that nobody would ever know if these crazy people didn't like go into these tiny little holes and bring their cameras and lights and show them to you. But it just goes to show like there's vast systems that are underneath the ground that are part of however this place works, right? And it's all driven by these different crystalline materials reacting, doing different ways with these different properties. Um, it's really fascinating if you start looking at stuff like that.
Excellent.
What was the one you said you wanted to see?
I want to see the crystalline things in the scripture.
Okay.
Sorry, someone else might want to see something else. I'm not just let's have a look.
Okay, yeah, crystals in scripture. Yeah, there was a breastplate that's described in the Torah where they use 12 different stones, which are different crystals, to represent the 12 different tribes. And it names them ruby, topaz, emerald, turquoise, sapphire, diamond, jacinth, agate, amethyst. Amethyst, which is just a quartz with that's a purple. Beryl, which is that a ruby? No, beryl is emerald. A type emerald is a beryl, I think. But some of these, like, we don't really know what they are, like shoham. We don't really know for sure which stone that is, but all of these, are different. They're just different crystals that have different properties, and they could even be representing these 12 different tribes because where the tribe came from, maybe that particular stone was found in the ground from where that tribe was from. I'm not really sure how they got picked, but um, yeah. And then also when they're building the temple, they're traveling, I can't think of the word of it. But anyways, the tent, right? That they would travel around in and have the ark in and stuff. I mean, it was very specific. You had to use brass for these fittings and silver for these fittings and gold for this. And even the ark was made of gold. And all of these things are very electrically conductive. It's like, you know, and then that whole thing with electricity and Elohim in the scripture, El being, the creator. So it's like, it just has that, and the way that the creator even um, presents itself or shows itself to man. It's like, oh, here I am. I'm lightning. I'm fire. These are electric processes. So anyway,
Karen, on some of these crystals, I mean, they have all different properties, right? So some are for healing, I'm assuming. Some can, I mean, can be some of the best crystals for certain things. What are the best ones that what do they do? They can obviously have a different effect on people, probably electromagnetically, maybe colour, I don't know. But what are the ones that are, say, for good health and things like that?
well, actually, quartz. Clear
Oh,
quartz.
okay.
It's a really good one. It's a really good all-around crystal. It's an amplifier. So don't leave your quartz next to your computers, because it could amplify the energy from your devices and stuff like that. But if you just have it on your own from with yourself, it's just a very good all-around healing crystal. Although, I think just about any crystal could be a healing crystal. It just depends on what it is that you need at that time. Another good way to pick out crystals too, if you're familiar with the seven chakra systems. You know how they got the red chakra, the root chakra, and then the orange, yellow, and then the heart is the green chakra, so on and so forth. Whatever color that crystal is going to align with that chakra, right? So green. That's why green crystals for the heart chakra, or people like amethyst for like the third eye, or whatever. And then clear quartz would be like probably for the crown. Blue stones for the throat chakra, like sapphire, stuff like that, lapis lazuli. That's a really cool thing about crystals and the realm, and like that chakra thing. It's like it's all color coded. It's so simple. It's so beautifully magically simple. Whatever color that crystal is, that's where it's going to fall on that vibratory scale. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, really good.
So what else about
No,
crystals?
that's excellent. I really want to know about that. What else? What else? Going forward with crystals, and it's like crystalline beginnings. Talk to me about the firmament, Karen, quickly. In what sort of crystal would that be if it's a crystalline slime? Does it matter what crystal it is, or do you think it's a specific one that's required for this realm? I mean, could it be?
Well, it would have to be one of the stronger crystalline materials, right? Because it would be the firmament. It has to have reflective properties, because if you Well, if you're going based off description from scripture, it says it's like hammered out, like a molten looking glass. So it basically it's saying it's a mirror, a highly reflective surface. I think Cami was saying she thought it might be platinum, which is actually a metal, but metals are crystals, so it still falls under crystalline
What was the
firmament.
reasoning behind that?
Platinum, because platinum is extremely strong, and when it's polished, it's highly reflective. You can have a mirror-like finish on it. Um, it's used in electronics. It's conductive. I mean, maybe it might not even be that. Maybe the firmament is made up of many different types of crystals together, you know, making whatever it is happen up there that happens.
Very, very good. That's fascinating, Carrie. Any other things you want to tell us a little bit more about on the crystals before we bring it to a close? It's fascinating me now. What about the shapes, the geometric shape? Oh, there you go. Right, okay.
Yeah, just that they're very key to how this place works in the physics of this realm. I think it's a very fascinating subject. I think there's a lot to be learned. Actually, look, if you look in this lower right hand corner here, do you see this one that's got like the tube and then the two things? It almost looks like a little TIE fighter. When I started looking into this, I thought because I had filmed the ISS go across the sun, transit the sun, and I took my video home and I analyzed it, and it looks like a little TIE fighter. And then I started looking at how different crystal habits and crystal forms, and I was like, wait, what if it's like some sort of crystalline object that they put up there that reacts with the telluric current that is up there, whatever is driving the scars, the etheric wind, as Bob would call it, the not the luminiferous ether, right? What if they put this thing up there and it just does its thing like autonomously because it's made of some reactive material, and then they grew it in this shape that looks like I don't know, that's just a crazy theory I have. But it just started once I started looking into these things, I was like, wow, they could be doing a lot of stuff with this. And actually, like with the jab and everything, and them injecting nanoparticles into people and stuff like that, one of the very first things that I thought was, oh my God, what if they put these things in and then your body stays a constant temperature, and it's like you are the heater and the slurry is your insides, and then these little materials that they're inserting can find each other and start growing, and forming inside. So, that's before even crazy ass Stu Peters was talking about it. That was like the first thing that popped in my head, because I was like, wow, all you need is the right ingredients and the right environment. So, right away, of course, we were screaming from the top of our lungs, don't let anybody inject you with anything. And that got us squashed pretty good back in 2020, but it is what it is. But but that also was like a confirmation. It's like, well, there's something to that though. I don't know if that's exactly what it is, but there's something to these natural materials that are on the earth and them being manipulated by man in nefarious ways. Just like it can be used for good things, like we're talking about using, my favorite thing is a raw crystal that comes right out of the dirt. I love that, even probably more than a faceted stone. Although sometimes when they're faceted, like if you guys have ever seen a Vogel crystal, where it's a clear quartz crystal and it has two ends, it has a giving end and a receiving end. There's something to that, because I picked up a Vogel crystal at a crystal show and I pointed at my hand and I felt heat coming off the crystal. It bugged me out, but it was literally, it had a little beam of heat coming off it. Not super hot, but when I put it near my hand, it was very noticeable. So, there's something to these materials and the way that they can be manipulated, and I think it's, a lot of the reason why, stuff really isn't taught in school, like in traditional school. Like I never learned a lot of this stuff in school. This is all stuff I learned way after the fact, just because I, ha- you know, woke up to flat Earth and now I want to learn stuff. But it's like, they don't teach you this stuff. They leave it out, and then they show you like, fortune tellers and witches and crystal ball, and they call you a stupid hippie or a crystal rubber, but really there's something to these things. So
Excellent.
shouldn't be
Excellent.
marginalized.
Karen, I fully agree. But listen, we're going to wrap it up now. So from Tom Bowler, 6 chances to win £5,000 tonight. Come up, I won't do. Karen, from the beginnings of Flat Earth to the festivals, guns, not being my wife, where can people find you, Karen? Do you want to shout it out? Because obviously you're on Facebook as Karen FE, Karen Bean FE on Facebook. Where else can you find you?
Well, I have channels on various platforms. I have a YouTube channel, but you know how YouTube is. It could go at any time, but I still have my channel for now. So Karen B on YouTube. I also have a Rumble channel, a Twitch channel, a Rockfin channel, Odyssey. So you can find me in all those places. Yeah, I'm there. I'm also on Telegram. I have a Telegram group if anybody uses Telegram. It's called the Flat Earth Rebellion. It's got like a little flat Earth map with the rebel symbol on it from Star Wars. It's kind of cheesy, but that's my group. So you can reach me there too. Yeah. And of course I do coffee talk usually every Monday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, which is, for you guys it's the afternoon by that time, but yeah.
Excellent. Listen, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, we have got questions. I was just going to offer out the questions. We've got a couple. Hold on, Karen. I'm going to pass you over to Tony, who is a flat earther. He used to be a pilot. So we get him all from here. And Tony comes from about 250 miles away every month to come listen to this. It's great. Good.
Nice.
Okay.
Hi.
I just wondered your take on Katy Perry, to Bezos, the origin, all the rest of the stuff, because it seems to be coming up all the time, certainly in my YouTube things I look at, and it seems to me that at last mainstream media are waking up to the fakeness that's been going on in space. Once they start questioning one thing, it can lead to questioning, that's everything else. And it seems to me to be brought with our cause. And I wondered what you might think about this.
I'm having such a hard time understanding.
Karen, sorry, he's from Kent. He was saying about Katy Perry and all the Blue Origin thing and how it's coming more and more mainstream. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, that was great. I thought that was great how basically everybody on the internet was calling BS on that thing except for Jaren. I thought that was hilarious. I was like, Jaren, you're the only one defending this mess. There's people on X, like thousands of people on X. None of them are flat earthers, and they're all like, this is nonsense. And Jaren was like, oh, this is real. I'm like, what? Strange. Wild. But I thought it was great how almost the entire internet called BS on that. That was great.
Listen, thank you for that. Yeah, what a nightmare that was. Jerry was the only person who thought it was real. He's flipped up on the moon landing as well now, so my big go card is full. So, he's, I'm ready to go. But listen, Karen, I'd like to thank you. I've known you for many years. I think you're fantastic. Like I say, you didn't marry me, you only love guns, so, we'll talk about that later. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for the wonderful Karen. Karen, thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, you guys.
My pleasure, Karen. Take care, my darling. Have a good evening.